Ken, how's it feel to be here?
Well, I'm honored, obviously. I'm honored to even have young people being interested in my work.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that because it's just like when I was a kid, I always worshipped all these comic book artists, and I'd actually meet them because this was the 1970s. You could actually come to New York City and call up Wally Wood or Neil Adams. It was just amazing. So it's a whole different world now because you can actually create your own comics and put them out there with modern technology.
We are certainly through the looking glass on that. What was the point earliest on at which you knew that comics were important to you?
Well, when I was a little kid, I got a hold of comics, but we used to go to these like garage sales when I was like maybe 5, and they would have these 1940s comic books like Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, and they'd have these crazy bondage covers, and I didn't even know what that stuff was, and I just bought them all. And they were all bloody because it was World War II, and half of them had like Nazis fighting the characters. I mean, it was a really crazy time for the comics. I always loved that period, the 1940s, and then, of course, the 50s with the EC stuff. And one of the things I got as a kid early on was the Mad paperbacks. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that. Mad would reprint like Super Duper Man or Bat Boy and Reuben,
yeah,
and it'd be in black and white. And I remember showing these to art teachers, and they would say, I think the guy did that with an engraving tool. Nobody had any idea how a comic was drawn. We certainly didn't know it was an India ink brush. Somebody, at best, they would think it was a fountain pen.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's very interesting how that works. Do you, most of your work that I think is probably best known from lunatics like us is some of your black and white work. Do you have a preference between black and white and color?
I'd rather have the younger kids do the coloring.
Yep.
I don't know anything about the digital stuff. I have no interest. It takes so long to draw a comic book page, especially the way I work with all the detail. And if you want a good example of how I work, you can look on YouTube under Ken Landgraf, and you'll see me doing the Ghost World pages. And what I did is I outlined them like Steve Ditko used to do. All the other stuff was done with a brush, like Wally Wood or something, over this outline. Because all that matters is the gesture of the figure. You could take that from anybody. It doesn't even matter if you swipe it, as long as you re-ink it your own way. Wood did that all the time. You take from anybody. Didn't matter who took from. You could look at Sal Buscema, for instance, and take the poser George Tuska. Nobody looks at him, and just outline the figure, and then draw it all in your own style when you ink it and put zip tone on it, whatever. It's going to come out like it's yours anyway. It's just a gesture of a figure. It's just like somebody went like this. It doesn't matter who drew the original, you know? And one of the things I noticed about figure drawing is you can look at a figure and just move the arms on it. You're going to get a different pose each time. The body's going to stay the same. Look, can't move. But if you move, if you move the arms, you got a different pose each time, or the head.
Yeah.
So you might as well just look at something to begin with. Who told me that? Gil Kane. He said, never just draw it out of your head unless it's at a comic convention or something. He said, always look at something, like whether you put a Frazetta drawing down, or Russ Heath, or any artist that you admire, and you try to take something from that drawing. Otherwise, he said, you're just drawing what you already know. Now, he had a photographic mind, so Gil Kane could whip the stuff off. I've seen him draw those Spider-Man scenes of him flying over the city. He knew three-point perspective. Most of the guys would just have to find a panel that looks similar and trace it. That's what most of the comic artists did, actually. Somebody like Wood could do it all in light and shadow and make it totally his own style.
Yeah, wow. We covered a lot of ground there.
Yeah, well.
Pretty solid. No, I mean, that's fantastic, man. The things that you've experienced and been a part of, and all of it that is intrinsic in you and influenced you is so much a part of what it is that makes what you do so good. You had mentioned about that YouTube channel. If you have not checked that out, you really owe it to yourself to do that. Watching this guy work is magnificent. The way that you can lay the ink on the page in such a way that looks careless from outside looking in, I want to clarify that, that creates such an amazing impression on the paper is frankly just astounding that you're able to do that. How long did you feel like it really took you in your life and your work and your career to get to the point?
First of all,
be so assured?
Be an inker. I was afraid of inking.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you do that? I mean, What changed my life was Gil Kane brought into a comic book store, Village Comic Art in New York City. He brought an entire story, the Teen Titans, that was penciled by Gil Kane and inked by Wally Wood. I Xeroxed it. The Xerox machine had just come out, so it was like 25 cents a copy, which was a lot of money back then. So I spent like, I don't know, 20, 30 bucks, and I Xeroxed every page. And then Kane told me to take tracing paper, trace over the Wally Wood ink lines to learn how to make it for a medium-sized figure, how to make the ink lines for a hand. And I just kept tracing over this and tracing over it and tracing over it, tracing over it. And finally, you get, it's like trying to learn how to play guitar or keyboard. After a while, you can improvise it because you know the notes, you know the chord patterns. The same thing with the drawing.
Yeah, it's very interesting to use that analogy with music. That's something I think about a lot, too. It is very much like jazz, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, very good. Ryan, I want you to note for me, and you as well, Manning, that it is now 10 minutes past the hour, and I want everyone to remember that it took me this long to mention that Mr. Landgraf is the artist on the first ever feature-length Ghost Agents presentation called Ghost Agents Outlaw Town. He's the artist on this, definitely the co-plotter, because I gave him a full 20 pages in which to go full Landgraf, as I said. This book will be colored by a guy we call Misimo, Christian J. Misi, who is also here, another tremendous artist. And you can order this now, and you can see 12 of the pages because Mr. Landgraf was nice enough to bring them with him. How's the experience so far on Ghost Agents? Has it been difficult? Do you find me difficult to work with?
No, I thought it was funny that the female character was taller than the guy, first of all.
Yeah, that was my only note.
I had to laugh about that several times because I had to become very aware that every time I drew the girl, she had to be taller than the guy, 6 inches.
Yeah, it's Donna Prentice.
Yeah, so I had to really think that through every time I drew it. So I positioned the male character in certain poses and foreshortenings to always make him look shorter.
Yeah, it's important. Yeah, that's my only note. I fully knew that when we started working together that I didn't want to in any way impose my own will. I wanted you to do what you want to do, especially with those 20 pages. And I can tell you, I'm a very fortunate person in life. The fact that I'm sitting here, that alone is major, to be honest. But the fact that I am able to, a couple nights a week for the last month or so, wake up in the morning to anywhere between 3 to 8 emails from Ken Landgraf of photographs of just insane violence, action, energy on the pages that he's doing for these characters that I, just kind of came up with. Ripped off. It is one of the greatest pleasures of my life, and I'm not just saying that. I hope I don't sound too much like Eddie Haskell, but it's definitely the case. Thank you, Mr. Landgraf. Thanks so much.
It was fun working on your ideas.
It means so much to me, and I really appreciate it. You're working on a lot of different things these days, which is great to see. There's another Ken Landgraf project that is currently available for Kickstarter campaigns. I've been told that we need to make sure that we give all these flyers away. This is a book called Ghoul Butcher. Yeah. You can support it on Kickstarter. Good for you, Manny. Anybody else that hasn't yet, shame on you, okay?
Sounds awesome.
Let's get with the program. Ken, I'm just kidding around. Ken, what's it like working on that one?
That's what Kirk Olfelford, and I've worked with him before on Ink Zeitgeist, and he likes to create ideas, and he has the money to pay for them. Like basically, he'll pay me to draw the pages from his plots, or sometimes he'll give me a sketch of what he wants, because I follow sketches also. It doesn't matter if you can draw, as long as you can put down on the paper what you want drawn, I can pull it off. And so it involves a resurrection of corpses, fighting a guy that's what is he? He's a mechanic out in the desert, and we have all sorts of things in there, like mummified museum dinosaurs that come to life to fight them, sharks, because I love drawing sharks. I've always had a thing about that. And it's a lot of things that I like to draw, and that he came up with the concepts.
Yeah, very good. It's got everything. It's got mummified sharks. When you start with mummified sharks, you're off to the races.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's exciting stuff. You obviously have a lot of work, too, on eBay that people can pick up from you.
Yeah, the eBay I kind of slowed down on because I'm going to these comic shows now. Actually, Heritage took me on exclusively.
Oh, wow.
And that's lasted for several years, and they were able to sell every single thing I did. But since I started going to the conventions now, I held back on that a little. I'm going to probably have to start that up because that was a major thing that they would even honor me with. They don't represent any artists individually. What they do is they only buy estates from collectors. And the only reason they took me on is I got lucky because one of the guys up there that's in power, the first comic he had was that Wolverine one that you...
Yes, yeah. That was the first comic I ever got off a spinner rack at a gas station. It had his work, the story where Wolverine and Hercules have a bar fight over a woman. Boy, they don't make them like they used to. I was 7 years old. It was a reprint, and that was what put the zap on my head.
Oh, that's funny.
It brought us here today, Mr. Landgraf.
That's great.
How about that?
So that also got me on Heritage, because they refused at first to do it. They said, we don't even represent Neil Adams. And so then I get a call back a few days later, and they said, I didn't realize that it was you. And of course we'll represent you, and we only take 10%. So I started sending them out. I sent them like 150 pages of that kind of detailed work, and they sold, so it was amazing.
Wow, nice. That's good to hear. It's also good to hear that you're engaging with the conventions more. You're enjoying that, obviously, or why would you do it?
Right.
What's the weirdest thing that's ever happened at a convention? Actually, you can answer that or not. I'll leave that up to you.
Nothing really weird has happened. There might be a fan that you want to get rid of because he's hogging the space and doesn't want to buy anything, let's put it that way. And keeps talking to you. But there's one guy in particular, he knew a lot of stuff, like his uncle was a scientist, so Neil Adams was interested in being a scientist, so he put him in charge with that. And then he started complaining about censorship in comics, which I didn't even want to hear. I mean, look at my artwork, half of it's nuts.
Yeah.
So he starts going, what about that thrill kill story that Neil did? I think that was terrible. It's basically a sniper, what do you call it, a serial killer. He's shooting people on the street in brutal ways. It was really cool, actually, but in today's society, it looks really horrible. So this guy was making a big deal. I said, well, Neil drew that in the 1970s. Who cares? He drew the Kent State pictures, too, where the kid's getting shot. You know, it's artwork. It's somebody doing expression. And my wife got kind of mad. She says, well, he can do whatever he wants. He's an artist. If you don't like his work, don't buy it. He wasn't going to buy it anyways.
Yeah, hell yeah, man.
The whole time I was thinking, how can I get rid of this guy? He won't shut up. But he knew a lot of stuff. He was over by Dave Cockrum's house, and Dave Cockrum had all these pets. And he said that he stepped on one of them, and it turned out to be a huge, giant rabbit. That was an interesting story. Of course, Dave Cockrum's one of the creators of the X-Men book. So
yeah, Cockrum. Do you like him? You like Cockrum?
Yeah, I like everybody.
That's a tremendous answer.
Yeah.
That's what you like to hear. All the frustration gets worked out on the page, I guess, huh?
I don't know if it's frustration.
Yeah, that's not the right word for it, but
it's something else. It's not even anger. It's sort of like being in a rock band, not being the singer of it. I played the keyboards when I was a kid. It's sort of like being part of a band and doing a guitar solo. That's what I'd compare it to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you learned everything you can about drawing or writing, of course you can improvise it, right? So that's what it is.
Makes good sense. And that is a very nice segue into another thing that I want to talk to you about. I love rock and roll. Mm-hmm. You and I love the same era of rock and roll.
That's weird. Well. You're a lot younger.
Hey, but, I was here before, Dad.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, right on. Mm-hmm. You played organ, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like one of my favorite groups of all time, Question Mark and the Mysterians. Let's give a round of applause. Everybody who recognizes that name. Me and Manny.
96 Tears.
96 Tears. That's a wild song. What was that like for you, playing in rock and roll?
First of all, I opened up for Question Mark and the Mysterians when I was around 14. No, this is true.
I believe it. No, I believe it.
What they did with the bands in the 1960s, like the Box Tops that did The Letter, they sent them to Wisconsin first to try out how they would deal with a Midwestern audience. What I didn't know, and which is really embarrassing, that organist in the Question Mark and Mysterians was 15 years old. And I talked to him years ago, and he was saying he was always mad because the other guys could get all these girls.
Yeah.
And he was this 15-year-old kid. They didn't want nothing to do with him.
Wow, that's pretty wild.
Yeah. And so we opened up for the Mysterians, and they were real professional. And it was just amazing to see that stuff. So I got to know a lot of those bands and talk to them backstage.
Do you know Question Mark?
Yeah.
Rudy Martinez? Yeah.
And nobody knew his name back then.
Yeah, it came out later. Norton Records broke that story.
Yes, they did.
Yeah,
in fact,
Kicks Magazine.
That Norton Records were connected with me also.
Really?
Yeah, they had a magazine at the time. I forget. Kicks.
Yep.
They came over to my apartment because I was making all these magazines for people. I like Thor, that rock band, or I do a comic book called Vicon for Mike Appel, the manager of Bruce Springsteen, because he wanted to launch a possible He-Man type Broadway show. And what happened was Kicks. That Kicks magazine came over. It was a husband and wife team. Billy Miller.
Yes.
Okay, so they wanted me to print their magazine, so I was involved with finding a printer for them and packaging and really heavy magazine.
Yeah, I have a bunch of them now. It took me a long time to get them, and it's one of those deals where it's like I have to get a magnifying glass out now to read that stuff. But for anybody that's I think we're kind of going down a road that not everybody wants us to go down necessarily. But that rock and roll stuff is. If like the guide to that stuff, there's so many great interviews and bits of information that would have been lost forever if not for Kicks Magazine, and it's very interesting to hear that you were involved in that as well. Another great rock and roll connection. Now, this story was broke by Dan Clowes not too long ago in an interview. He mentioned how you got your Zipatone. What can you tell us about that?
That was done two ways. The funniest story is I found a picture of Elvis for a comeback tour.
Yep.
It was a halftone screen. I printed that out and used his face on the early Outlaws. You can see parts of Elvis's face in those comic books.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Then Wally Wood gave me some Zipatone. I still have it, and I make photocopies of it because that's like a sacred thing. He touched it, And,
Awesome.
So I have that still, and he also gave me a white Zipatone sheet. So that's pretty. What white Zipatone is, if you look at like a figure, it's in black and white. You put this white dots over it, makes it look like it's invisible. So
yeah. When it was funny because I'm an Elvis freak too, which I guess tracks. But when I heard that, I knew exactly which one it was. It's called "This Is Elvis," and it's like the cover has got. It's good because it's got equal dark and light. It covers the gamut, so it's really perfect for that. Mm-hmm. When that came out and you saw it, were you like, "Son of a bitch, that's what I need"?
Yeah, it looks like a Zipatone, and I wanted to use it because it was weird.
Yeah,
that was the only reason. But
you wanted to use it because it was weird. Yeah. Everybody. That's how we think, all right?
And the weird part of it is Clowes came into the studio along with Pete Friedrich. I finally remembered these guys' names, and Mort, Todd. They were kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
They come into my studio.
Together?
They were kind of scared, too.
Wow.
I guess they were kind of scared of me.
Yeah.
Kind of. Well,
we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, please go on.
So I ended up showing them all this stuff, and then they said, "You think you're as good as Wallace Wood?" And I said, "No, but I think I equal them in this one panel." Which is kind of true. I still don't think I equal them.
Well,
I have my own style, though.
Yeah, Wood. I mean, Wood is Wood. It's one of those deals where it's like
Jimi Hendrix trying to be better.
Yeah, but you're something else. You've got a savagery that Wood didn't quite have as much.
Right.
And sort of what's interesting about this, I don't want to say anything that's even remotely disrespectful about Wood, because he was a great man and he struggled with demons, and anybody who does knows that it's nothing to wish on anybody. But Wood's work sort of had a smoother quality and was a little bit more maybe lyrical, you could say.
Yep.
And he really struggled and had a hard time with a lot of things. Whereas I haven't known you for real long, but you seem really, happy-go-lucky and well regarded, or well sort of adjusted, I suppose. And your work is wild,
Yep.
It's kind of interesting how that works. When I met you yesterday, I was like, man, what is this guy going to be like? What is this dude like? Looking at the pages and like just the, that sheer like just primal energy that comes out on the page. And you're a sweetheart. I'm really glad to meet you. You're
That's funny.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know you well enough. Huh?
You know me pretty good.
Nice. All right. Well, thanks. So what you knew Mr. Wood a little bit. Remember that?
Well, what happened was I asked Wood if I could be an assistant. At the time, he was saying, "Well, I think your stuff is really good. I don't think you have to assist." And then he told me to try out for All-Star Squadron, which he was going to ink. What happened with there is I got screwed out of it because Vinny Kletter, who's the art director, I was supposed to do layouts, leave it on his desk. Somebody stole my pages.
Wow.
I gave it to Creek Giffen. So that's my real contact with Wood, because Wood recommended that I do it because I was trained by Gil Kane. I lay a perspective.
Right.
I'm not saying I was as good as that, but I could do some kind of resemblance.
Again, you are, I would consider you equal to Gil Kane.
Well,
just different. You're doing different things.
Okay, so I didn't get that job. And so that was,
man.
And when you're going in a career, this has been going on for a long time. People are going to die on you. Editors are going to get fired. At one time in the 80s, Marvel fired anybody that was over 40 years old.
Yeah.
Just got rid of them. And DC did that. They cut off Kurt Swan. I mean, these guys created the comic books. They didn't care.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's always the thing too. Is like
Anderson. None
yeah. You know. I mean, we're always real excited about like when Kirby came to DC and stuff. But like they're perfectly nice guys who were also great creators for whom that was really bad news. And it's like, you know, it's a yin and yang in a way. You know. Mm-hmm. You have any idea of any culprits of who might have? You can say no comment if you wish. Of who might have swiped those pages.
What?
Who was the person that might have swiped those pages?
Well, I know who did it. I'm not going to say who did it.
Okay.
That's what everybody thinks did it, too.
Okay. All right.
He's very tall.
Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. All right. I'm sorry, yes.
I would say this. I was at a comic store, and all of a sudden, here's these John Buscema pages coming out of this portfolio. Let's put it that way.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, man. Those stories are so legendary.
And that same artist confronted Bernie Wrightson one time and said, "Why are you drawing like this? All that detail. You're going to have all of us drawing like this." Quit doing it. He was really angry about this.
That's really wild.
And then he's saying you guys are a bunch of like kid hippies or something. He was an older guy, and he's saying that you have girlfriends, you don't have a wife, you don't have a house to pay for, and he says you're spending like he yelled at Michael Kaluta too. He said you spent like 2 weeks on that page. That's just crazy.
Man.
And Wrightson, he was like linger over the Swamp Thing all day because he could do whatever he wanted. He wasn't married. He was like running around, getting drunk, smoking pot, whatever he wanted to do.
Rock and roll, man. There was this period of time, and this is something I always want to try to get at with Ghost Agents, the comic book that I write and produce for Cosmic Line Productions. There's this idea that I have that during the 60s into the 70s, comic books were sort of part of the sex, drugs, and rock and roll paradigm for a while. Yeah. It really, like, you know, you see pictures of like Barry Windsor Smith at conventions, and like he looks like the lost member of the Doors, and you know, Wendy Pini, Hubba Hubba, you know, in her Red Sonja outfit. Like that was some cool times, right? How'd you feel during those days?
Winnie Pitting, when she met me, she said, "I like how you draw Hawkman. You draw him sexy." I didn't even know what to say. The girls were coming into the business at this time. What do you say that? I also worked for Ms. Magazine, by the way. I worked for Gold Diamond, and I went up there. I was like scared stiff because they picked me to draw like this Wonder Woman type thing and women business.
That was you?
That cover wasn't. No.
Okay.
There was an inside thing on women in business.
Yeah.
So I come into her office. I didn't know what to call her. You know, nobody knew this stuff yet. You know, this stuff hadn't been. It was being invented.
History doesn't repeat itself; it just rhymes. I'll just say that.
Scared stiff, and also when I worked for Bill Cosby, I asked him if he wanted the character in this episode of the Cosby Mystery Show. It was an Egyptian. I said, "Do you want him to be black?" And he said, "No, just put a mask on him." So, because you know, I didn't know what these people were expecting, what anybody was expecting when you go up to an editor.
Yeah. Wow, man, that's really interesting. Yeah, your career has definitely taken you in a lot of different directions, right?
Yeah,
a lot of different things. What would you say was the thing that you probably would most like for people to know that you've done that maybe they haven't seen, or just in general that you kind of feels like your magnum opus?
I don't know. I've done like so many different things in so many different camps. I'm not even sure. Like I even did like a humor books for a while for Workman Publishing and Wallman Publishing. And I also do classic illustrated. I actually, at the same time I was doing covers for Screw Magazine, I was doing artwork for all these religious magazines. But I was influenced by the Doors. They were kind of like satanic at the same time as being religious. And,
the Doors of Perception.
Yeah, that's right. One there.
Yeah.
In fact, every time I sit down and draw, I always think about the Doors. They always said you had to break on through.
Break on through to the other
Referring to is you get creative on that page. How are you going to do it?
Right on.
You're dealing with a blank page. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
So I always think that I got to break through. Atkins told me always do what Wood do: take a shot of vodka or whiskey.
Yeah, he stuck to that?
Yeah, he told me that.
Right on.
He did it too in front of me. He was when I was a kid. I was up there. Maybe I was 23 or something. He was inking Iron Fist by John Byrne, and he goes and gets down the whiskey bottle and he says, "I'm taking a shot of this." He didn't offer me one, but he took a shot.
Oh man!
Starts going like this with the ink.
Yeah.
Ready, he goes in. Gil Kane told me when you get up in the morning, don't even go pee-pee. Start drawing. That's what he told me. He didn't use that word. He said, just go on the board and start sketching. He said, every time I get up, I shouldn't even tell you this. He would say that I always had a fear that I was going to lose the drawing ability because it was like a gift.
Wow. Like it's like
Gil Kane, a master of human anatomy and perspective.
Like it comes from elsewhere.
Yeah.
You know, you just kind of have it for a while. Truly, like literally a gift. That's a very interesting way to look at it. What would you say would maybe be like one of the craziest experiences you've ever had working in comics that you would like to share? Important caveat there.
When I first worked for Howard Nostran, the Harvey horror artist, I was an assistant to him. First of all, Neil was laughing. He said, "You want an assistant job?" And I said, "Yes." And he's laughing his head off because Howard was drinking all day. Okay, so he's like slurring words and stuff. And Neil's laughing. He says, "Get on the phone and tell me you want the assistant job." What I didn't know is all the World War II comic artists were drinkers. Heavy.
Yes.
Back from fighting Japanese and Nazis.
Yes.
Gil Kane used to talk about that all the time. Wood was a paratrooper.
Yeah.
They were all like fighting and killing people at 18 years old.
Yeah.
My dad was even involved in that. He was in the Normandy invasion.
Yeah, you're going to come back a little screwy.
Yeah.
That kind of an experience. They didn't have the proper vocabulary.
How those guys did that? They just come back and they go back and having families and
it's wild.
Being married and having kids.
Did you ever hear the story about Kirby where he worked at EC for like just a moment and they asked him to draw a man being burned alive?
No.
And he said, "I saw a man burned alive and I'm not going to draw it."
Oh, that's funny.
And I'm going to go work for Stanley.
Wow, I heard that story.
Yeah. Heavy stuff. Boy, we're getting into all sorts of territory here this afternoon, aren't we? Feels like a good time for Q&A. We'll just do about 3 questions, maybe 4 if they go briskly. I want to make sure that we get Mr. Landgraf back to his table. If you haven't been there yet, please go. Tremendously interesting and engaging art that you can buy at really fair prices, I'll put it that way. He's got the Ghost Agents pages. He's got 12 of the pages from this book that he can show you. I think you'll be impressed. And he's got a lot of great things to offer. So we'll take a question. Can I see you, sir?
How did you get connected with Gil Kane?
I was going to the School of Visual Arts. First of all, I was in Vietnam, so I had the GI Bill. I didn't have to kill anybody. I was lucky because I got noticed right away that I could draw. And so I started working for the captain and writing speeches and doing kind of like propaganda work.
Wow.
And I got to do a lot of drawing. And I wasn't a soldier. I was in the Navy, so it was different. I was working for the executive officer. And so I was going to SVA for free, and I also won a scholarship because I had submitted my work and stuff, so they accepted me. Anyways, to make a long story short, I came there. Wrightson and those guys were ahead of me. They were a bit older than me, and they were already working because they didn't go into service. So I got permission to attend Kurtzman's class and Eisner's class, even though it was second and third year student classes. King came into Kurtzman's class as a guest. I showed him my work, and he said, "Wow, it looks like you're influenced by me." And what happened was, as soon as he left the class, I just like bolted out of the class, ran down the stairs, and I said, "I want to be your assistant." He just goes like this: "Come to Marvel Comics on Friday and meet me up there." So I had to in him. Besides Stan Lee letting me get a break early.
Man.
Yeah. It was a different time. You guys are in a whole different world now. You had to get to meet people, and you had to somehow figure out how to meet him. What I did, to make a story short, I stayed across the street at Marvel and waited for Stan Lee to come out of there with my portfolio. I made it look like I was just walking down the street. And he comes out, and I said, "Are you Mr. Stan Lee?" And he goes, "Yes." And he says, I said, "I just got out of service. I want to draw for Marvel Comics. Can I show you my portfolio?" He said, "No, I'm going to lunch, but go and see John Romita." And then John Romita introduced me to Marie Severin, and she took a liking to me and gave me photocopies.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I ever saw what a pencil drawing looked like. Where would you see a pencil drawing?
Yeah.
They didn't print that in any. There was no comic journal that had a photo of a pencil page.
Right. Yeah.
She changed my life, Marie Severin.
Yes.
And she
Yes,
was
indeed.
Severin's brother. That was amazing.
Yeah.
Sister.
Very interesting how that kind of
Yeah, I was the only female in the business at the time.
Yeah.
Ramona Fraden, who also was very friendly with me.
dearly departed Ramona Fraden.
Yeah, well, she was beautiful.
Yes. And her work was.
Up till she died.
Yeah. She retired like mere days before.
Amazing.
Yeah. Really remarkable. Another guy who had a sort of a similar trajectory is Jim Steranko, my friend and hero, who sort of muscled his way in a way. He said, "Stan will see me," and then that went pretty well. How do you know Steranko a little? You have any experiences?
Yes, Steranko bought, when I did Rock Comics, he brought 2,000 copies of it. And so did Phil Suling. That's how the early distribution was done. I also sent a copy to every single comic book store in America, which you got from the Comic Buyer's Guide. What that was a newspaper weekly, and in the back would be all the comic book stores. So I copied and photocopied all the names and sent them all to all the stores, and I got orders. And Steranko even offered me a job at one point. He said, "You really are enthused about comics. Nobody else is that I'm seeing, And he offered me a job in Reading to go work as an assistant. I turned that down because I'd just been a slave up there. And
There's stories about that. There's I'll let you Google that. There's some interesting stuff. I guess he bought those to sell in preview then.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay. Anybody else? Ryan, you got anything?
Let somebody else ask. I've interviewed him.
Oh, that's true. Manny, what you got?
I got nothing.
All right.
I interviewed him too, though.
You, sir, what you got?
Aside from Wally Wood, who's your favorite DC artist?
I like them all, and you can learn from everybody. I think, to tell you the truth, I think Wood was my favorite there, but I think Jack Davis could outdraw everybody.
Yeah.
He could just make that stuff up. I've seen him do it. And Reed Crandall could outdraw all of them, but he's more boring because he was photorealistic. I liked Al Williamson because of the light and shadow and how he'd use that white ink. He would take out like an outline off of the figure so you just see like the shadow under the figure.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot. But he was more of a photorealist. What I mean by that is artists like the Flash Gordon artist, Alex Raymond.
Yeah.
They were getting a lot of money to draw those Sunday pages, so they could take a Polaroid camera and shoot a model.
Yeah.
And then draw from the model. The comic artists couldn't do that. They had to look at Bern Hogarth's Tarzan or Prince Valiant and try to make up a figure.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to kind of note. I've always kind of heard that like the newspaper comic would be like the ultimate. Like if you could get one of those, you were sort of set. Was that the truth?
Yeah.
That I would felt?
And they all looked down on each other. The illustrators looked down on the comic strip guys. The comic strip guys looked down on the comic book artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And Wood and Kirby had a strip.
Yes.
Called Sky Masters. First name Sky, last name Masters of the character. And you've seen those, I'm sure. God bless America, those are so good. Yeah, it was Kirby did the layouts and then Wood did the inks, which was like, that could work or couldn't, and it's chocolate and peanut butter. I mean, it is so good, those comics. That's I'm pretty fanatical about. Did you ever have sort of a shot at that? You ever think that maybe there was a point where you
I attempted to draw a World War II thing when that, I don't know, there was some bicentennial thing of the World War II, Normandy invasion or something. I sent off some comic strips to the New York Times, I think it was, or Post, and they didn't take it. And also Maurice Horn, if you remember him, he was the big historian. He put out all the history books on comics. He was going to do a 50-volume World War II series, and this was at a time when the publishing was falling apart, so that got canceled. I would have been rich just from that.
Oh, boy.
It was going to be thousands of dollars.
Yeah, that's always the thing, like that.
Well, you're constantly doing that. You're constantly getting knocked out and then going back, and you got to start again. Well, this might be different for you guys now. This is what it was in the
Yeah. Kickstarter is a miracle for people like us. I say people like us as if me and Ken Landgraf are the same type of person or something. We got anybody else? Who's got one?
I just am really curious. Every artist I've ever spoken to starts out drawing, as a young kid. Where did you start drawing when you first started drawing?
Probably as soon as I could draw. I really don't remember the year. It must have been, when do you start drawing, like 4, 3?
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Okay, so it's probably the same thing. And one advantage I had is I had those Mad paperbacks, so I used to copy those drawings by hand. Because every time you'd copy something from, like, let's say Mad, whether it was any of those artists, you learned something.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was old work. I had no idea what it was. I mean, I didn't even think a human being drew those comics. Did you guys when you first saw them? I mean, it was surrealistic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they really are like.
I didn't know it was a 40-year-old man or a 50-year-old man. That's how old those guys were. Kirby was an old guy who was drawing that stuff already.
Yeah,
How could he even do it?
it's amazing stuff.
But in his 40s, I think.
Yeah, it's weird to think that now.
Yeah, well,
At 45 years old, it's very interesting.
just to get the energy that he was creating like he was a god.
Yeah, tremendous. Yeah, the level of output too, which, I mean, about that. You work very quick too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, ghostagents.net. Take it to cosmicline.com to order this book. If you're following all this on social media, you will see more and more images. It's colored by the great Christian J. Mizimo, who is also here, tremendous artist. And then the Kickstarter is live now for Ghoul Butcher. You should buy both of those comics, not just mine. And on that note, what's next for you after these, Mr. Landgraf?
Well, I'd like to do some more Ghost Agents.
Okay.
I don't care what I'm drawing. I would love to draw that.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I have to say this when you initially, because you have a couple pages, 4 pages that are in Ghost Agents Apocalyptico, which is available at the Cosmic Lion Island on the sales floor. And you, at that point, wanted to you asked me for a script then, and I was like too intimidated. Believe it or not, I'm a little bit of a shrinking violet when it gets down to it. I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do about that, and I had to really think about it. And I saw that Kirk was having so much fun doing his book with you, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. Talk to Eli, and we worked it all out. And writing that script, it's always interesting because as a writer, when you write a script with an artist, you have a picture in your head of what you think it's going to look like, and then it might come back like 90%, which is wonderful, and it might be 10%, and it's still wonderful because it's interesting to see what can be done with that, and it's kind of like a baby being born, and it looks like both parents. Anyway, with your stuff, I gave you a full 20 pages to just go nuts with it, and I've been really excited with
Actually, 30 pages.
Well, it's a total of 30 pages, but 10 pages I script somewhat heavily,
Right.
and then for 20 pages, it's just like pages,
right.
yeah,
Yes.
pages 11 through 30 go full Landgraf. They fight, right?
Right.
Yeah, and it's been, I said this before, but it has just been a great joy to be able to watch those pages come in.
Thank you.
Is that a fun way for you to work? You like it like that?
Love it.
Yeah,
I
excellent.
like immediate feedback on stuff. And I like
Yes.
that you were shooting all the hands with the gun.
Yeah, this is based on a toy, an action figure that is also a character called Max Almond that you can get. You go to ghostagents.net and you can see how to do that. And Ken will send me an email at an odd hour, and he'll say, okay, we need the gun from this angle, the toy from this angle, so we'll get him off the shelf and set it up and take a picture.
Of the hand without the gun.
Yeah, to see what the angle is. And, I mean, if I could go back in time to that kid who was about to buy that comic book off the spinner rack and tell him that when he's 45 years old, he'll be sitting there with the guy and talking about how, you're taking pictures of a toy so that he can draw it. Pinch me. I won the lottery. Fantastic. Mr. Landgraf, you're something.
Thank you.
You're a hell of a guy.
Thank you.
And it's so wonderful to be here. What would you have to say to people, the sort of the comic fans of this age?
Well, I think they're lucky. They're obviously educated as they want to be. You can study all comic history. You can look up. I mean, that's amazing when you think about it. I had you couldn't find anything. If you didn't have a picture morgue, for instance, you couldn't draw anything. Like I remember I had to draw like White Fang one time, which was a classic book for the Filipinos. Keller was going to ink it, and they didn't want to draw the dogs. So I went through all these. I went to the comic store and I brought all these Rex the Wonder Dog comics and turned them into wolves.
And now we can do anything.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ken Landgraf. How about it, right?